All right, so here we are today, Ditch Digger CEO. We've got an awesome guest here, Robbie, Mark Kaufman. I've heard so many things about Mark without ever meeting him. Many mutual friends that often said, "Well, do you know that Athletico guy? Man, that guy's amazing." Or hey, do you know Mark Kaufman? He's the guy you want to talk to about that, right? And you have so many YPO friends of mine that are friends of yours, Mark, and different people that are aggressive entrepreneurs that love your story. So I've heard so many people mention you, and then eventually I had the blessing to meet you at a fundraising event here a couple months ago, and sure enough I said, "Man, I want you on my podcast," right? And you kind of gave me an indication you might do it, and so we followed up, and you're in, man. So we're excited. So Mark Kaufman is one of the best entrepreneurs that I've seen in today's world, and excited to tell your story, Mark. So Mark, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get going right away. We'll start digging with questions and all that. But thank you and welcome to being here with us in Ditch Digger CEO.
Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, and Gary, it was a real blessing to meet you several weeks ago, and right back at you. I'd heard so many good things about you, and so many, starting the YPO group at the business sector, senior name, and there you were. So it was fun having that conversation, and I look forward. My name is Mark Kaufman, and I am the founder and executive chairman of Athletico Physical Therapy. We are Athletico is a physical therapy business that was started in 1991 with one location in downtown Chicago. And that was the grand plan that lasted a couple years. We opened a second site in 94. By the end of the decade 2000, we had 10 locations. By 2010, we had about 60 locations. And present day, 2020, we are around 530 locations in 12 states.
Wow. And when you look back at this kind of a hockey stick growth, right? I mean, you see this a lot in scaling businesses, right? I mean, your first 10 years, kind of slow growth. I mean, probably fast growth compared to the industry, but slow growth compared to what you're doing today. Probably a lot of lessons learned, right? To be able to get your systems in place, to be able to educate and scale like you have, right?
Yes, Gary, we I went into it. I'm a small town Iowa guy, and to imagine first that I could open a business in Chicago, coming from where I came from, and keep it open, that was the goal. And I thought I'd be a physical therapist seeing patients for 30, 40 years and retire at some point. I had no ambition to open that second site, but then a person that worked for me came to me and said, "Hey, I think we should have a location here." And by then, 2 or 3 years of understanding the business and what was working, what wasn't working, and obviously, like you said, making some mistakes, started to get comfortable with that. So we opened a second location, and I jokingly remember when we opened our Glenview office in Chicago, that was our 6th location. I thought we had pretty good coverage of the Chicagoland market, and now we have probably 200 locations in greater Chicagoland. So that goes to my level of business instincts and acumen there. But it came a long way in a relatively short period of time. But each step of the way has been kind of personal comfort. We went from 1 to 2 to 10, and then we did 100 locations organically up until around 2014 before we ever did an acquisition and integrated another company, which is a whole another ball of wax, as you know. But those were those early days, a lot of great memories, a lot of great people are still with the company, and really came to understand what and how we could differentiate ourselves as a physical therapy provider.
Well, you mentioned Iowa. Small town guy from Iowa. It sounds like. I mean, can you go back to a little bit of your childhood, where you did grow up, and what type of atmosphere you lived in, and what created this Mark Kaufman guy in the first place?
That's a deep subject. So I'm from Olds, Iowa, OLDS. It's if you look on the map, most Iowa maps will have it. Back when I was there was about 200 people. I think it's down to about 180 now. And my parents still live in the same home I grew up in. I was there 2 weeks ago. I went and visited them during our pandemic, and socially distanced, of course. I've been joking that they've been under a quarantine in Olds, Iowa for 40 years, just no one ever told them that. But, I characterize it as an easy way to grow up. I mean, if I would make a mistake, the whole town would know about it in short order. But as a rural community, a farming community, my dad grew up on a farm, and I worked on a lot of farms. My dad's trade was carpentry. He worked for the same company for 40 years practically, and I probably took something from that, in that I knew my dad could do it on his own, but yet he wanted to come home every night. I think he knew that if he was going to start his own business, grow his own business, that would take him away from me and my sister and our family. And I'm sure there was a level of, I'll call it, fear in going out on your own, because it wasn't that we were living paycheck to paycheck. They were always saving and being very prudent and thoughtful around that. But yet, he would do a lot of odd jobs on his own and earn separate income other than what he made working for the construction company he worked for, and that was usually building residential homes. But I think I got a work ethic from him. His name's Larry Kaufman. My mother's Carol. My mom, they're still with us, thank goodness. Dad's in his 80s now. Mom's in her later 70s. But she was a beautician. She had her own beauty salon for a number of years. It was attached to the house, and finally walked away from that after, I guess, my sister and I were at the age where she needed to spend more time with us. But it was an easy way of growing up. I have one younger sister, Pamela. My high school class was 50. I always scold my daughters that I was in the top 10 in my high school class. Why can't you be? It's only 800 here at Hinsdale Central. And I stay connected to a lot of close friends from those years and classmates. I've supported my high school. It's a consolidation of 4 local towns to formulate a high school, and which is fairly common in Iowa. But I loved it. I was, it was, like I said, an easy way to grow up.
Were you one of the sports stars there in school?
Sports star is an exaggeration. It was if you went out for sports, you were on the team. I was an okay football player, and I was an okay wrestler. And my football coach made me go out for track one year, and that was all I needed of that. But if in Iowa you can't shoot a basketball or do anything else, you become a wrestler, which is obviously big in Iowa. And actually, honestly, led to where I am today. The quick story is that my senior year in high school, I knew I wanted to go to Iowa. Olds is 38 miles straight south of Iowa City, where the University of Iowa is. And I knew I was a Hawkeye fan. We didn't have pro teams. I liked the Chicago teams, and I was a St. Louis Cardinal baseball fan, still am, White Sox fan now. And so I wrote a letter to a man named Dan Foster, who is a mentor, still a close friend. And I just said, hey, I'm coming to the University of Iowa, and I know a couple things. One, I wrestled and played football, and 2, I know I can't do that at Iowa, but I'd like to stay involved. And if you need any help, he was the athletic trainer working with Dan Gable and the wrestling team, and I said, if you need any help with them, I'll be there for 4 years, and I'd love to do that. And he sent me a packet around the athletic training major, which I didn't know what an athletic trainer was, because we obviously didn't have one at our high school. And that piqued my interest. And the sports medicine background, working with the athletic teams, helping athletes, kids, men and women get back on the field. And ultimately that led to me getting accepted into the program, and then on to graduate school and physical therapy school.
Wow, how cool is that? I'm working around with one of the legends in wrestling. I was a football wrestler in high school. I didn't go to college. You may probably know that, but bottom line is, I was a star of a very small school also, or one of a few stars in football and wrestling. And I went to a bigger high school for the first few years, and I wasn't quite as much of a star. It was about 5 times the size of a high school. I started. I just wasn't, a stud there. But bottom line is kind of similar in that, you really grew to want to be around that. I really grew to want to be around the atmosphere of the team atmosphere in football, and then the team atmosphere in wrestling. Much different than football, but yet, really a great atmosphere to be around as a young person. And then also, understand the different training that has both sports. You got to be in pretty good shape, right? But totally different training, and from football to wrestling, right? You think you're in great shape, and you go from football, you're ready for wrestling, right? But boy, you get started running around the mat and doing the stairs and wrestling endlessly, right, for a couple hours a day, and you realize you are not in shape at all compared to wrestling shape, right? So that's an atmosphere. I stayed around a little bit in coaching afterwards and hanging out and stuff. And nowadays I've helped to build a wrestling program in our local high school that's been fun to watch as they've gotten to be very good. But for you, I mean, when you look at that, the work ethic of in wrestling as well, right? You probably, if you grew up as a spoiled kid, you're probably not going to be a very good fit, even if you're a decent athlete, for the wrestling team. Football, you can get away with it a little bit, in my opinion, but wrestling, you aren't going to get around, hard work if you're going to be on the wrestling team, right? I'll go back to hard work. We have a kind of common thing. My dad worked in a factory and did side jobs all the time and had his own little businesses going on, serving customers. My mom did things to help out to make a little bit of money here and there as well. But you grew up with what I think is an unfair advantage, right? Two great parents that love you, a family that loves you, a sister that loves you, I'm sure, and that loving atmosphere, the work ethic that you had to grow to respect when you watched your dad and your mom, right? That's in my opinion, that's unfair advantage compared to a kid that doesn't have those two parents and a loving family like that. But when you saw your dad busting his butt, right, coming home and going and building a house or two besides his normal job, and your mom cutting hair, what was that like, and how did that shape you?
I've just smiling thinking about it, Gary. But my dad is the hardest worker I know, and he never, my wife calls it circling like an airplane. My dad never sits still. I can't really sit around and relax. If I'm watching a game, I got to be doing something, or if I'll listen to a game if I'm out in my garden. I like to garden. I get outside, do stuff. I'll walk the street and pick up trash. I got to do something. But I always frame my dad as someone that, to my dad, and he never said this, but I've heard him say things that I truly believe he believes this, is there's two types of people in the world, hardworking and lazy. And you either work hard or you're lazy. And if you're not working to your capability, you're going to probably fall in the latter category. So my dad kept himself busy. I don't, taking naps is something I've never been able to do unless I'm confined, like on an airplane or in a car, that I'll fall asleep. Thankfully, not when I'm driving, but I get after it. I always bite off more than I can chew regarding work and things I want to get accomplished in a given day. But I always say my dad was as hard as working, and my mom worked hard too. Don't get me wrong, but my dad, he wasn't making a lot of money, but he knew if the more hours he worked, he would make more, and that would provide, more, or give it more of a cushion. It was just kind of the way it was. And I know I get my motor from him, and it's given me, I think I've taken advantage of that.
Well, and with that motor, I mean, when you got into this business, if you can explain to us how you got into it, and then, well, after that, I'd love to hear more about the Iowa wrestling, because I'm a huge Iowa wrestling fan and a Dan Gable fan. Dan Gable is the legend of all legends, so to be around that guy had to be amazing. Anyway, but bottom line is then if you can go into a little of that, as well as the hours that you were used to working, whether it be when you worked in college, after college, and when you started in this industry and everything else. Love to hear about that.
I always, felt that, I'm a list writer, things I want to do, and I have my list now, someday maybe lists, and, think priority lists, and how we all find our way to kind of keep ourselves organized. And I'm by no means perfect, but I've always been, I remember this. My dad used to wake me up in the mornings when I worked probably from I know I started when I was 10. I used to go all summer long with him on the job site, and then a job site. He let me off for playing, Little League baseball. And then a couple of summers I worked on farms, walking beans, baling hay, tiling, things like that. And then I think when I was 12, I think I did that for a summer or two, but it wasn't really an option for me to sit around and watch TV all day. So I did that. And then from age 12, 13 on through high school and then college, before I started working in Iowa City and working with the teams, I worked every summer with them. So I'll say it this way. I'm a pretty good carpenter by myself, but with my dad, I can do about anything. I wish I would have paid more attention when all those years I was working for him. But my dad used to ask me while I was working for him, he might have me in a crawl space and it's, middle of July and 100 degrees. And more than a few occasions, he would say, "Don't you want to do this the rest of your life?" And I'm like, "I don't want to do this the rest of my life." And so I know the lesson he was telling me, like, you have an option here. You can go to college and figure that out. I paid my own way. My parents provided some money after I graduated. I think they were hedging their bet to see that I would finish. But I worked through college too, and back then, I remember my bill for the University of Iowa, I think, was roughly $4,000 a year. My kids can't believe that, but that was $2,000 in-state tuition, $2,000 room and board. So you could back then, and that's one of the problems today. There's a lot of problems, but back then, if I worked my tail off all summer long, I could pay for a year of college, making $4,000. Now imagine for a kid my age or that age back then, trying to make $60,000 in a given summer. It's impossible. And so, things have gotten out of whack there.
Big time. And I think we maybe lost Gary for just a second here, but no, so I'm interested then to dive a little bit more into the Iowa wrestling. Can't imagine what it was like working alongside Dan Gable, but I would imagine that there is quite a few life lessons that were learned through that process.
Yeah, athletics is, just there's so much can be gained. I know Gary talked about playing football and wrestling. So you got an individual sport and a team sport. And so being blessed to be able to do both. You don't have to cut weight in football, and you walk out on the wrestling mat and you see an opponent across the mat that you're going to be tussling with for 6 minutes, unless you've done it, where you are fully invested in tearing his arms and legs off and he's trying to do the same to you. You can't really appreciate the energy that goes into that, and it's something to behold. But I grew up an Iowa wrestling fan, and going up to the old field house and the new Carver Hawkeye Arena that they still use to watch Iowa wrestling. I've been to any chance I get. I go to meets back in Iowa City. I watch it on the Big Ten Network. But Dan Gable, you have to know Dan Gable's story, and I could talk plenty about that. But he was a coach at Iowa roughly 76 to, I think, the early 90s when he retired. He was an Olympic gold medalist in Munich in 1972. Never lost a match in high school and college until his last match of his senior year at Iowa State. And I was there during the middle of, I think, a run of 10 straight NCAA championships. And so when I was around the team, it would have been 83, 84 to 86. And they dominated, Big Tens. They won like 20 straight Big Ten titles and 10 straight NCAA titles. And they're still obviously competitive. They should have won, secondary to COVID and the pandemic. They didn't have it, but they were on pace to win the NCAAs this year with a wonderful team. And Dan, unique coaching style, but got the most out of his wrestlers. And as an athletic trainer, I remember hearing the comments around at a certain period of time, which was usually right before Big Ten's, middle of February. There was no such thing as an injury. No more injuries, no matter what. You're not injured, you're healthy, we're going forward, and Big Tens are up, and NCAAs are next. And it wasn't that bad, but guys knew that they had to be fully committed to what was coming on the schedule.
Right. You talked a little bit about his coaching style. You want to dive a little bit more into that? And are there any overlaps from his coaching style to how you sort of projected that into your business career?
I remember him and his assistant, Jay Robinson, who ended up going up to Minnesota. And one of the things I remember him saying to the camp wrestlers in the summers, which are hundreds, thousands of kids coming, I remember them saying something to the effect of, your definition of hard work and my definition of hard work are completely different, and you're going to come to understand that in the next week. And so that kind of set the tone of no matter how hard you thought you were working or how hard you thought you were competing, there's always another level. There's always another gear. Dan used to have what they called red flag days. They were just intermittent days. If something had pissed him off, upset him, that he didn't feel the team was coming together, they weren't working hard, they weren't fully committed, he labeled these things red flag days, where our job as athletic trainers was basically to set up little Dixie cups of water where the wrestlers, on a whistle could go off the mat, throw a Dixie cup of glass of water down, and be back on the mat in like 10 seconds and go. And you had to watch these. I mean, we worked hard in wrestling practice in high school, but I'm not sure I could have lasted with what was going on there. And then I remember I happened to be there when Dan was upset. Dan Gable was upset with one of his wrestlers who will remain nameless. He's a pal and a great wrestler at Iowa. But I think what happened was one of his professors or counselors had called Dan and basically said that, either wasn't showing up for class regularly, or wasn't, he was failing, or wasn't, doing his best, which, the wrestling coach doesn't want to hear that, doesn't want to be bothered with it. He wants his guys in the wrestling room eligible and competing hard, and he wants them, when they're not in the wrestling room, doing what they should be doing. Anyway, Dan declared that day a black flag day. He said, I'm going to exterminate you. And it was one of the hardest wrestling practices I've ever seen in my life. And so
wow,
I think he got it from the black flag, roach retardant or whatever. He got the name, but Dan was an amazing coach. Still stays involved with athletics, and one of his, Tom Brands is a coach now, is one of his disciples. Tom was an Olympic wrestler, Iowa wrestler under Dan.
that's insane. Yeah, so I actually grew up a wrestler for myself as well. Not my entire life, but my older brother was a wrestler all through high school and ended up still staying on the club team during college. And so immediately, of course, just being the younger brother, I started following along. And at the time, that was when Cale Sanderson was blowing up throughout the entire United States. And obviously his story is relatively similar to Dan Gable in terms of success.
Yeah,
but it for sure teaches you just incredible life lessons, but then the ways that you can apply that in your professional career are just limitless.
Mm-hmm.
So through that process, then obviously you were working alongside as part of the athletic training team. You want to touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So I was, the way it worked was you got accepted in the program, and then your first full year, which was my junior year at Iowa, you worked with all the men and women's sports. Iowa had what was called at the time the model undergraduate program for athletic training in the country under Dan Foster. But there are so many people that I stay in touch with. Most recently when I was back in Iowa City a couple of weeks ago, I reach out to these men and women who are, in their 60s and 70s now. Guys like Dan Foster, John Streif, Ed Crowley, Gail Wadley. John Albright was our team physician. And it speaks to Iowa's culture around that they stay connected, and I want to stay connected with them because they set me on a path, or helped set me on a path that was important to me and gave me the career I have. But you worked with all men and women's sports your junior year, and then your senior year you were assigned to one sport. I actually wanted to work with the wrestling team, but didn't get my first choice. I got assigned to the football team, which ended up was the 1985-86 season, and I was a student athletic trainer with the Hawkeyes, and that was the Chuck Long, Ronnie Harmon, Larry Station Big Ten championship team that beat Michigan 12-10 in one of the arguably the most famous game in Iowa history. A little sidebar was, so I'm a senior in college, and I got assigned to work with football, and I got to fly in an airplane for the first time. We came to Chicago from Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to play the Wildcats at Northwestern in the fall of '85, and beat the Wildcats that year, but ran the table, almost lost one game to Ohio State, and then went on to the Rose Bowl and played UCLA. Unfortunately, a tough game, but it was, as a kid, as an Iowa fan, I mean, you can't, as an athletic trainer, get too caught up in the game other than taking care of the athletes. You got to do your job. but having the opportunity to work with the Hawkeyes beyond the field, help, in some small way contribute to their success and be part of a successful team around coaches like Dan Gable or Hayden Fry, or Lute Olson was back there then, and Vivian Stringer was a women's basketball coach. I like to soak it in. I like to, I would say all the mentors I mentioned in athletic training and all the coaches I've worked with over the years. And I've been so blessed to have not only great people around me, but also just people that you can learn from, and mentors that I challenge, coach people around me that I've mentored. And you want to have your personal board of directors. You want to have a group of people that you're willing to leverage and ask questions for. It's going to make you so much better and smarter. And I was blessed with a boatload of them starting at Iowa, working with the teams.
And that's exactly how I feel about Gary. It's seriously the same relationship that him and I have. And he talks a lot about mentorship. And Gary, you want to touch on true mentors a little bit?
No, you know what? We've had a lot of fun, Mark. We built a nonprofit called True Mentors, and basically put together probably half the mentors are YPO, or friends of mine in YPO, and then other friends of mine in business that I've got to be close to and become mentors to people that want to be business leaders, whether it be executive someday or entrepreneurs. And so we put them together, and we have a lot of fun with it. So it's been a blast. But I've done that because, just like you, my best education has been through other people, understanding their stories, their shared experiences, what enabled them to scale a business, what enabled them to create a culture that I'd want to create, all the different things that we talk about for a successful business. We can learn through great stories, especially of trusted advisors that care about us. So I love it. That's something I'm very passionate about, and that's what this podcast is for as well.
So then post-college, you jumped straight into the PT career, and did you start as a physical therapist yourself and then decided you wanted to jump into starting your own business?
So what happened was at Iowa, I finished there, and I didn't know much, but I knew I loved what I was doing, working with the teams at the college Division I level. And I also felt I had a lot to learn. So my step was, if I could get a graduate assistantship, meaning I get my master's paid for at a good program, then I would go on and do my master's. And I got licensed at that point, you can get licensed or certified as an athletic trainer. So I passed my licensing boards, and then went as a licensed certified athletic trainer to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and did my graduate training there. And they had a great graduate program, and worked with the Wildcats for 2 years, working with a lot of the sports, mainly football, track and field, cross country. So you get to see injury patterns, and that was all great. Both of my head athletic trainers, a woman at Arizona named Sue Hillman, and the gentleman I mentioned at Crowley at Iowa, were also physical therapists. I didn't know what an athletic trainer was before that, didn't know what a physical therapist did. But they encouraged me to go to physical therapy school. I thought that would, being a physical therapist and athletic trainer, might help me get not only a better income, but also help me differentiate myself from others who were applying for jobs if I was dual credentialed, if I could get into PT school, which was hard then, and it's even harder now. And I applied to several, and I got into Northwestern, which ultimately was my first choice because it brought me back to Chicago. Backtracking a little bit, I had a couple roommates from Chicago at Iowa, one from Joliet, one from Downers Grove, that I came back, and I just fell in love with it, Chicago. I just saw it, I had the Midwestern values. I felt comfortable, small town guy. It's a city I felt comfortable in. And I love Chicago. And then lo and behold, I meet this partly crazy, because she married me, a Greek girl at Iowa. Iowa paid my room and board to move in with the football players my senior year out of an apartment. And so that, saved me the money for room and board. So I moved into the dormitory as a senior and helped take care of the guys that had responsibilities that were with that. And Marianne was an RA, resident assistant, in that same dormitory. And back then it was boy, girl, boy, girl. And I'll just say a lot of my football players used to hang around her floor, and she saw me as a non-athlete administrator, so used to chew on me to get my football players offer 4, which was really the last on my to-do list. I didn't really care. But that's how we met, and we've been married 32 years now. And she was from Joliet, Tinley Park, 100% Greek. Her parents are wonderful people, immigrated from Greece, Marianne's first generation. Proud of her Greek heritage, as all Greeks are. And we have 3 wonderful daughters. Fotini is 26. 26 down.
Mark, did you have a big?
Go ahead.
I'm sure you're asked this a lot, but did you have a big fat Greek wedding?
Yeah, I could write a mini series of that movie. There's so many scenes in that movie that are pitch perfect accurate, and like I said, I could and I pointed them out to my wife. I mean, it's, Iowa, what I grew up with, I hugged my grandmother, but I never hugged my mother, or never kissed her. I do now. And it's brought a lot to us, but Greeks do a number of things. One of them is show emotion. And I mean, they talk about, I'd sit down for a meal and I'd finished it before they were done talking about how great the salad was. And my dad and I were out the door. We had things to do. And so it's brought a good balance. Greeks are fun people, but yeah, that movie is spot on.
Yeah, I've been a few Greek weddings, and boy, they are so much like the movie. It's a blast. I love going. It's almost like you're going to like a musical or something like that. It's like they're imitating what it's supposed to be like, but it is what it is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of fun.
100%.
And so when you started, you talk about, as I do as well. I love thinking about how do I differentiate, like. I think individually, how do you differentiate so that great gal wanted you as their partner for life, right? How do you differentiate so that great team wanted you on that team, right? Doing what you did as a trainer. How do you differentiate when you start that first business? And I mean, so differentiation to me, I was often called different by people. They say that guy's a little different. Boy, he's something's loose upstairs, but he's a fun guy, right? I mean, people, to my face or behind my back would say, yeah, he's a different type of guy, that Rabine guy, right? But I believe that in life, if you're like everybody else, you're not going to stand out very much. If you're serving a customer like everybody else, you're probably not gonna stand out very much. You're gonna be commoditized often, right? Mm-hmm. So when you speak of differentiation a lot, so I'd love to hear, when you started, what did you think of when you started this business, a small business in Chicago? What was your goal? Just to be in business? Were there some things you thought you could do differently than other people back then? Explain that a bit for us, if you could.
Yeah, so after my physical therapy school at Northwestern, that was 1989, I took a job. It was where my wife and I were living in a garden level apartment in the city of Chicago, which means that we were living in a basement. And there's a physical therapy clinic a couple blocks away, and I took a job there. I interviewed other places, but I took a job. And it was a good place. 2 partners were running it, and they had opened a second site during the time I was there. They were having, I would call, differences of opinion, and I was sitting and watching that. They weren't necessarily getting along, which they ended up splitting up shortly after I left. And but I was there for 2 years, and I remember coming home once, Gary, to Marianne, my wife, and I said, they've had so much turnover here, and now I was literally managing one of the facilities. A year out of school, I'm managing people and learning like HR capabilities, things like that, and some other skills that I didn't even realize I was learning that would help me later on. But they were, I came home and told Marianne, if I keep my, head down and keep moving forward, these guys, because of their problems and they're trying to grow, are going to have to make me a partner or something more than I am. And my wife quickly said, to her credit, why do you want to be their partner if you don't respect them? And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. And so that's ultimately what led to Athletico. And so I started thinking about that in 91. To differentiation, there were some things that I didn't feel I wanted to do. I wanted to do personally, and because it was my background, selfishly, I wanted to get out of the clinic, meaning I wanted to get out in the field and work with kids, work with athletes. I had started a little outreach program back then and going out. And what I used to do, like working with Division I athletes, I thought, well, I want to be a Division I athletic trainer. Well, then I started realizing when I was working with high school kids, I just loved working with athletes. And I worked with club sports, rugby, and things like that. There's not been a team I haven't enjoyed contributing to or being part of and getting something back from it. And so I started doing that. And my supervisors weren't too, overly, I guess, supportive of it. They didn't really know. And I didn't know, what it could bring to a business or a clinic. But it truly became a differentiator because I was so used to working with physicians, working with out in the field, so to speak, evaluating injuries, determining what they are, what doctors should see the particular injury. So then through those, a lot of coverages, going out at nights, remember, no kids yet. I had no other, I wanted to work. It was like my dad. I wanted to get out in the field. I wasn't going to go home and sit around. So after work, I'd go out and work in the high schools. On weekends, I'd cover rugby games or high school games. So then I'd get my hands on these injuries. Now, what do you do with them? Some of them I could take care of, triage them, take care of them, provide acute care, refer them to an emergency room if they had to go. But others, they didn't necessarily have to go to the emergency room, but yet I had to get them on the right path to get them back and get them healthy. And so then I started developing a network of physicians. Who's the best knee doctor? Who's the best shoulder doctor? Who's the best foot and ankle, spine, stuff like that. And there's options. There's, Chicago, you're blessed with a lot of great institutions and healthcare facilities and a lot of great physicians. But I started referring, Gary and his injured wrestling shoulder to so-and-so for shoulder specialists. And I got him in. I made sure the insurance was covered. I made sure it was a convenient location. It might be where he's doctored before. It might be a group he's doctored with, but then I would send a letter with him, or I'd go on the appointment with the athlete and just kind of run through the history, what I saw in the field, how he injured it, what he did, my evaluation, what I thought was going on. I was good enough to be right most of the time. And these doctors started, I was sending them patients, and they're calling me like, who are you and what are you doing? And because no one does that. And so it wasn't big back then. There were schools that had athletic trainers, but there weren't ones that I think that were taking it to the level of detail that me, Athletico, and how we do it, where we were it wasn't just giving you a name and here's a list of doctors you can go see. I would set up the appointment. I'd go on the appointment. I'd send a note back in, and it just provided, I think, a soup to nuts kind of platform for us. That was one of the ways we were differentiated. Other simple ways were, I was there 6 a.m. and be there till 9 p.m. We were open on Saturdays. A lot of facilities weren't. All of our patients, I'd say 90% of them were working, and they couldn't come in the middle of the day, but they could come in at 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night or on a Saturday morning. And so I think they found it that convenient, and the physicians like that we would get patients in as soon as they'd shoot them over. If they did knee surgery or something on a patient, then we would get them in right away versus making them wait until next week, because that ultimately reflects poorly on their care if they're not getting back as quickly as they could. So there were some, differentiators that I didn't know what I only did because I thought I needed to do it, and I wanted to do it that way. But there was also the I call it the fear of failure factor that, I borrowed $40,000 from my parents, $60,000 from my Greek in-laws, and another $60,000 from a college roommate of mine. That's how I funded Athletico, because no bank would give money back in '91 to a startup business in the horrible markets we were in back then. So that was the cash flow that started Athletico.
Oh, did you give all those guys equity or what?
No, I paid them. I gave them a great. You remember, I think I bought my first house in 1990. I think my interest rate on the first mortgage was like 12%. People don't remember that, but you do. And I think I'll say that I exceeded that number and gave them a very good interest rate. And I did it for many years, meaning well beyond when I had to. I would just send them their monthly interest check, and they held the principal for a long time, and I think they were very happy with their rate of return, and I needed the money, so it worked out.
But now I bet they're saying, man, we should have gotten we just forget about paying us back. We just want a couple points of this business, right?
Yeah, well, There's a number of people that say that. What I did do, and I think it was the right model at the time, and it certainly worked for us, that I saw, kind of through my story of my first job, I saw I was a physical therapist and did a good job. And we've had so many men and women that have done great jobs for us and still do great jobs for us. But back then, the way I did it was we opened another center, and then that center's manager could buy in equity into that facility. And so they became a true partner. And if their center performed well based on performance, there's some factors involved. They could buy up, another 5%, 10%. So you generally start with 10% of the equity and buy up 5, 10. So a lot of them would own up to 30% of that center. And then we developed a regional manager level where a regional manager would own, 30% of their center, and they could own 10% of any of the centers in their region, which simply said meant there was 40% of the equity at play that the leadership team for the region and the center managers could buy, and they paid fair market value, but it was reduction on the number that made it easier. I loaned them the money or signed off on the loan, co-signed the loan at Citibank, we banked with back then. And it was very easy because there's a lot of these were like me, college kids that couldn't go out. They might have bought their first condo, had their first child, but they couldn't go out and borrow $100,000 from a bank. And so when we did our first private equity deal, I think I had 78 partners in the business. And
Wow.
obviously they did very well over time, and as did I. And it was a proud moment. But when you have equity in the business, you care about when the lights go on.
How fun is that, right? To be able to see that, to be able to be part of something that was a blessing to so many lives, right? Through hard work and serving your customers at a high level, and rewards happen. That's awesome. Now, when you do that, Mark, I've had some experience with it as well. And it doesn't always go right. I mean, at first it looks like the right person, and when it doesn't work out, what did you do? When you had a few of those that weren't, maybe the work ethic wasn't what you thought, or maybe something else got in the way in their lives, right? That changed how they wanted to approach your work and your customers. What was your out as a company if you had a person that just wasn't quite as passionate as you wanted to be and you had to move on?
Well, it's a good question. Legally, the structure and the partnership agreements, I don't want to say I was king, but I was king, and long live the king. I had right to do that, and they had to trust me, and I had to trust them. So that worked pretty well to help us protect the company. But I'll tell you this, Gary, the first partner I had, I'll just say, was our second clinic, and he just did some things that left me no option. And I remember thinking, first, oh, that's really stupid. Why would he do that? And then my second thought, disappointingly to me, was, what if what he did ended up on the front page of the Tribune? Our brand, our reputation would be ruined. So it made a very easy decision that I had to terminate him and let him go. And that was my first partner. Lucky for me, and I think for our partners, that I got beyond that very quickly and said, I think the model's still the right model. I just had the wrong person. And so I did a little, and this person was a good therapist and good at what he did. He just had some personal flaws, I'll say, that led to his undoing. And so I learned a harsh lesson there, and did a better job with my, I call it diligence, and getting to know people. And I'm a trusting guy. Again, I think that probably comes from small town Iowa a little bit, but you just don't expect people to do things they do. But, been around long enough, I don't get surprised as much as I used to, where I never saw that one coming. And those things don't happen as me. I think I've seen most of it all, but there's always still some things that, people make decisions that they have to be challenged. But, those early lessons, like I said, my first partner is one that I had to let go. And I luckily and thoughtfully got beyond that to where we grew through that. And, but I remember the headaches associated with that. But I'll say this, that, anytime I've had those, what you might call hard decisions or whatever, that's just a label. We make it hard when, frankly, when we know we're doing the right thing, and it's the right thing for the company and the business, and it might be the right thing for that person that they need to be removed. It it's made the decision much easier
Sure.
for me.
You know, yeah, you know, and when I look back, and you know, I think as we get into our 50s and all that, I think we start to get a little wiser, hopefully, and we learn a lot of lessons over the past, you know, decades to hopefully carry us through the next decades, and hopefully we can mentor and share experiences that you know, we can help other people avoid some of these pitfalls. But you know, one thing I would say is, you know, when I was a young guy making mistakes and hiring, or making mistakes in equity or whatever it was, I would like, man, that hurt. I trusted that person. It just didn't work out. They didn't, you know, they didn't really respect the relationship as much as I thought they. Whatever happened, right? I was a little bit disheartened for a little while, and I'd have friends of mine that were in business around me that were my mentors back then. Small business people that really weren't growing would say, "That's why I don't trust anybody, right? That's why you're not supposed to become friends with your employees, right? And you got to stop trusting people so much, right?" And then you think a little further past that and realize that's not the right thing either, right? I mean, you got to trust people, and yet that small town mentality you have, and I have too as well. I trust everybody, and I know that I'm prepared that I might lose trust with some people, but if I do the right due diligence, and I think that people have the right character, values, right? I'm right more often than I'm not, way more often than I'm not, that I can trust most of the people that I think I can. Now, again, you got to be ready for that person that for some reason isn't aligned like you thought there were and stuff. But I think overall, if you can constantly trust, people will trust you. If you don't trust, people won't trust you. It's pretty easy, right? If you can see that the person trusts you, and then you'll therefore trust them. So I think, you know, in business and in life and leadership, especially if you're a scaling mind like you are, I think you have to trust, right? And you know, you got to be ready that you put all the right stuff in place, that if the trust isn't there in the long run, that there's decisions you can make to separate and move on. So I like how you talked about that, because it definitely hits home for me, right? And that as you grow a business, you have hundreds of teammates. Not all of them are going to be a perfect fit as you grow. So
yeah, the
cool.
people relationship.
When you think about how you scale. When you think about how you scaled, Mark, I mean, you know, what was the secret to scaling? You know, it took you 10 years to get to those, you know, would you have 10 within 9 years, I guess, 10 locations in 9 years.
Yeah.
And now you're growing crazy. What allows you to scale like you couldn't before? I mean, I'm sure money and that kind of thing is a big part of it, but what else is important to scale consistently and successfully compared to those first years where you may have tried to scale and had some pitfalls as you learned, right?
Yeah. Well, a few things happened. I mean, in the early days, we were basically operating each business as a separate unit. And when we had, I think, our 6th, 7th location, we paused for our huge growth spurt. But we only had 6 locations, but we created a corporate office billing center so we could support all the offices. And so we did that in LaGrange Park, Illinois, and that was our first corporate office. We since now call it the Resource Center. We don't like the corporate tagline. But we did that in around 96, 97. And that gave us, you know, the platform to grow from. Obviously, we didn't anticipate going into the hundreds. We were looking to support, you know, by then I probably thought we'd have 10 to 20 centers. And we got to that level. We were probably 25 locations in the mid 2000s. And by the end of that decade, 2010, like I said, I think we had around 60 locations. By then, and I think it was 2003, we built a bigger corporate. We got moved to a bigger corporate office in Oak Brook, Illinois. Moved our billing and collection center there, and all started to have all the corporate functions work out of the Resource Center in Oak Brook. Today, I'm in our new offices. We just moved in Oak Brook, a few blocks away, because we outgrew that location. But you know, we were growing along. We were probably opening 3 to 5 centers a year, and I probably went to 6 to 8. But I remember talking with the partnership, so to speak, and our field leaders, and I just said, you know, there's groups that are growing faster than us. They're taking on debt to do it, or they're attaching to a strategic partner, or what have you. And I said, I believe in what we're doing. We're beating in every market we're in, which is mainly in Illinois. By then we'd opened, I think, in Northwest Indiana, Indianapolis, and probably Milwaukee. But in every market we were in, we were competitive and really strong, obviously, in Illinois where we started. But I just said to the team, I said, you know me well enough. I started with one center and that was my plan. And now here we are with 30, 50 centers. Do you want to do this? Because it's going to require all of us to step up our game, and we're going to be growing at a different level. And if we take on debt or bring on a private equity partner, that's going to take on an even more intense level. But I felt for us to continue to grow, we were going to have to do some acquisitions. We're going to have to grow at a faster pace, because what I saw happening was not only in the markets we were in, but the markets we wanted to go to, that companies like ours were springing up, being competitive. And, we wait around 5-10 years, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, so to speak, that we're going to have a steeper hill to climb. So we either decide we're going to be a mid-sized, smaller physical therapy company, or we're going to grow. And we obviously decided to grow. Now we're in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in the country, depending on how you want to measure us. But the team pulled together, and we took on, like I said earlier, we had 100 centers, I think, when we did a deal with Harvest Partners in May of 2014. And I'm still here to tell about it, but then we did our first acquisition. So imagine this, Gary, we had 100 locations in 2014. We did our first acquisition, and later that year, the end of 2014, of a company called Accelerated, who was based out of Chicago. We had about 1,500 employees. They had around 2,500 employees and around 240 centers, and we acquired them. So we bit off. Wow. We over doubled our size and went from 1,500 employees to 4,000 overnight, and then we had to integrate that and make it successful. And we did a great job. The team on Accelerated side, our side, I think we pulled together in good form and did that integration over the next year to 2 years, brought on some people that we needed for their expertise to help us through that. And again, I'm still standing or sitting now to tell about it, but you want to learn about M&A overnight, that's probably the way to do it. And I wouldn't recommend it. My plan was to acquire some smaller groups in some of the areas I was looking to get into. And our partners brought up that option and some options like Accelerated being the biggest apple on the tree, so to speak, because they had operations in St. Louis, Indianapolis, Michigan, Iowa. I wanted to get into Iowa for the obvious reasons. And so they were already, to their credit, they had already done some acquisitions. They just never really fully integrated them, which can lead to our culture discussion. But we did do the acquisition in the end of 2014, and that put us up from 100 sites to 350 overnight. So that was a big wow. Thing to swallow.
Well, and you just mentioned it, Mark, but yeah, that's what I think about when I think about this, right? So we bought some small companies, and we've grown in other markets and stuff. And boy, the biggest challenge always, and we've done nothing like this before, like you're talking about, right? What is it like to understand, the organically how you grew and you created the core values you believe in, and hired by the core values and fired by the core values. Right now you take on an organization bigger than yourself, who has their own core values, their own culture, right? Probably a little different than yours. Right. What was that like? I imagine they took on your name, right? And then tell us about that.
Yeah, and that was part of it too, because there was parts of their organization they done. For example, in an acquisition of Pro PT, Pro Physical Therapy down in St. Louis, Accelerated acquired them in 2008. And then lo and behold, we show up in 2014 and it's still Pro Physical Therapy. So the good and bad of it was Accelerated acquired some great groups, but they never fully worked to integrate them. I think they took a easier path and they just kind of kept them along for the ride, kept everybody happy. No one was ever told no or whatever. And then we show up, and now it's our job to not only integrate Accelerated, but also integrate the companies they had acquired over the last 5 to 10 years. And so you're talking, what I was excited about was looking at, I'm pretty collaborative, open-minded guy. I was excited to look at all the things I thought Accelerated did well, learn from that, look at how we do them and do it better, right? And then figured out that, instead of looking at their culture and our culture and comparing what's good and bad about each or what it could be better, we were looking at about, 6 to 10 cultures going on within Accelerated and trying to land on one and trying to understand it was difficult. But where we took a step back, and I'm not saying by any stretch we did everything perfect, but we quickly realized a couple things. One, there was a lot of great people there that were committed physical therapist and wanted to do things as good as anyone, just like we did. And we had to make those, I'll call them loyal relationships, where they believed, what I said or what we said, and we would honor that and work with them and support them. And we may not always agree, but we would explain if there's a difference of opinion. We'd try to come together. And we got, I heard it over and over again. One thing I was, when I was going out to the field, all the site visits on the road show or town hall meetings, the one thing that I have a lot of memories from those meetings, but the one thing that stood out was that at every meeting at the end, when I'd ask for questions or anything I could answer or talk about me or the business or history or whatever, someone would raise their hand and just say, thank you for coming out and meeting with us. Because that's something that the previous leadership just didn't do. And it taught me, not only was it a good thing to go out and do it, but I was coming back. And I made it back to those fields. And I'm an operator at heart. I love being in the field. I love walking into clinics, and, it's fun still to walk in unannounced and they see me, and not everyone knows who I am now, but they'll walk in and just start chatting with people and do the surprise visit. But usually I bring treats. But the people were really appreciative that I would take the time, and it felt, we as a leadership team, we talked about, we have to get out and meet these people and talk to them, or, there's just too much risk. We could lose the field because we are in a people business.
How different were the core values, Mark, from yours to the new companies that you're acquiring?
They had a lot of, I think they had what Athletico had in our early, our first 10 to 15 years of business. And it was a person I met through YPO. I don't know if you ever came across a gentleman named Jim Dethmer, Conscious Leadership Group. And he was a facilitator for my forum. And I met him, and I didn't honestly, it was my early days as a forum member at YPO, and I'm just sitting around with the guys and gals and talking, and I thought he was another business leader that was part of our forum. And then he started poking and prodding, asking questions and challenging people in a way I'd never seen before. And I'm like, that'd be really interesting. So I was smart enough, I think, to bring Jim to our leadership team meeting. I just asked him, I'm not sure what I asked him that first meeting. I actually came across the agenda. I could dig it out at some point, but I brought him to a meeting to talk about a certain subject, and it was probably leadership related or what have you. And I remember seeing him during the meeting. So we had, I'll say, a 3-hour meeting, and he was going to do the last 40 minutes or something. And so he gets up, and before he even starts talking about what his subject matter, he said, it's been really interesting. I've been here for an hour or so, and I see, what I would call the most important people in the room are the most important people for Athletico. And what you're doing from my vantage point is you're talking through your numbers and your results and all the things, and you're delivering a lot of information when you should be using this time to talk about the deepest, most important things that are going to lead to your level of success, or what are the most crucial things you guys should be talking about right now. Because you could deliver that in a PDF and tell everybody I read it and just assume it, versus throwing all those PowerPoints and results and patients cared for and new patients delivered or what have you. And so, of course, I'm standing there off to the side feeling like a jackass that the guy just called me out. But it was the best thing for us. So what that led to was almost a complete reversal or transformation of the meeting, where we spent, if it was a 3-hour meeting, we might have spent a half hour to 45 minutes just going through results and expectations. But then we went into, what are we about? How do we refine our service? What does our culture feel like? And Jim and the team led us through an exercise where we identified our core values at the time. And that was probably, I'm going to say 2008 or so. So we've been at it 15, 16, 17 years. And we didn't, we Accelerated's mantra was putting patients first, and ours was get people back fast or whatever. We had our taglines and advertising and things like that. But did we really sit and talk about what are our core values? And that was an interesting exercise. We had 100 people in the room. If one person raised their hand against any proposed core value, it was off the chart. And so we started getting, like, you and I would get together and we come up with our top 10, and then we get together with 4 more and narrow it down to 6. And we ended up with, I'll say 15 to 20 values on the screen with all of us in front of them. And we landed on 4. We landed on patient services, number 1, accountability, being accountable for our work and everything. We're accountable for everything in our life, continuous improvement, and teamwork. Those were our 4 core values. And we've since done some work now, and we call it our pact at Athletico now, which incorporated that and some other things we wanted to focus on. But I got to tell you, those 4 were important for me because, if I was whatever, in a funk, dealing with a difficult decision, whatever, I'd eventually get to, how does this decision, how does this problem, how is it impacted by our core values? And when you say, okay, how does this issue impact patient service? Who's accountable? How does it affect us getting better? Or how does it affect our team? The answers became pretty self-evident pretty quickly. And we landed on those, and we talked. It wasn't an easy process, so to speak. We used them in our language. We had expectations of rolling them out to the entire team. And there was a little of that touchy-feely culture stuff, whatever you want to call it, or put a label on it. But I got to tell you, Gary, it was an important milestone for us because it gave us a feeling of we're all in this together, and we're, it was at the same time when we're about to embark on a huge growth spurt. And many times through that integration, when I'm sitting there with going through the accelerated integration from 14 to 16, trying to figure out, sleepless nights, trying to figure out, am I doing this right? What am I missing? To have the comfort of our culture while we're trying to identify what was the best of Accelerated's culture, but we could fall back on our own and get most things right was really helpful. But that was a great exercise for us, and Jim Dethmer did a fantastic job.
I like that you did it in 4 instead of 5 or 6. Some people have 7 or 8 or more, right? And I think that the more concise you can be with 3, 4, 5, heck of a lot easier to remember and live by, right? So that's 4 is a great number in my opinion. We have 5, but 4 is a great number, and I wish I could get down to 4. But you mentioned Jim there and stuff. You also mentioned a guy named Dan Foster as a guy that you looked up. That name sounds so familiar, and I can't place it out. Is he a mentor today to many leaders and stuff? Is he somebody that coaches in a big way or something? Because I know that name really well. I just can't picture him.
No, Dan's retired now. Dan's in his mid-70s. He was an athletic trainer that, right now he's reading the classics and he sends out emails, summarizing Canterbury Tales and Shakespeare and things. Dan's one of the smartest guys I know. I keep him close to me. He's actually going to my place in Arizona and staying in my home in a couple of weeks. But he and many others, working at Iowa, just watching that group of people, and I mentioned them earlier, John Streif, Ed Crowley, Faye Thompson, Gail Wadley, Ed Gregori, Dan Foster, different roles, different people, our team physician. He made me proud to be an athletic trainer. John Albright said, this is an athletic trainer-based sports medicine services at Iowa, and without the athletic trainers on the front lines, we wouldn't be successful. And that felt, as a student trainer, that felt really good. But Dan was a great, like I said, smart guy, patient guy. He's the one who was our direct contact with a bunch of students that we didn't go off the reservation and get in trouble or do everything. We were doing our job effectively and preparing us through our professional training to graduate from the program and get licensed as an athletic trainer, which if we fail those licensing exams, then he's failed.
Right. When you so when you look at all these teammates, and how is it 5,000 today or 6,000 today? How many altogether now?
I don't look at our payroll numbers every week for a good reason, but yeah, the number is somewhere north of 5,000. We're around 5,500 team members at Athletico.
And what is that? And what is the composition of that? How many physical therapists? How many administrators?
Oh, you put me on the spot. So we probably around 16. Yeah, I'm going to guess. It's probably, I'll be close. There's probably 1,600 to 1,800 physical therapists and occupational therapists. Those are people who work primarily with upper extremities and hand. We have about 400 athletic trainers. A large chunk of our employees, I hope they become future employees on a full-time basis. There's a lot of part-time interns, aides that help support, there are people that want to go into physical therapy or occupational therapy or athletic training that assist in the clinics. That might be paperwork, documentation, keeping the place clean, kind of like a student trainer does at the university.
Yep.
And then we have our billing and collection center for managing our reimbursements. We deal with all the insurance payers. And but we have around 5,500 employees. I would guess around 2,000. Half of them are licensed professionals that are working with, interfacing with, the most important relationship we have, the interface between the patient and the therapist.
Okay. When you look at early on, I mean, is there anybody out there you saw that was like you today, or somebody that, let's say, had 10 clinics or 20 clinics that you look up to at any time and say, someday I want to be like them? Or and today, do you look at another industry? How do you aspire or inspire your team around you to constantly reach and reach and reach like you guys have done?
Well, I think our value of continuous improvement, the mantra I always had as CEO of Athletico was, I think we do everything well. I think we do a lot of things better than others, but there's not one thing, name me one thing we can't get better at. And we can always improve. We can always get better. And if we don't, the old adage, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're never standing still. So if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And so I took that approach. I think the team, reacted positively, and they're the ones that helped us fuel the growth. But that's kind of the way I've looked at our scaling and ability to grow and how we did it. And it's I can only say it's worked for us.
Is there anybody out there you look at? You don't have to name the competitors. Is there anybody out there you look at and say, we're still out to kick their butt and be big, better than them, bigger, better, stronger than them?
Yeah, there's companies. It's ironic. There's Excel. Back then in the early '90s, they had these things called phone books. So I wanted to be an A, and that would, people ask how I got the name Athletico. It's actually a Greek word from the word athlete is Athleticos, but it didn't come from my wife. She never gave me. I got it from a patient whose husband was a priest, and I was telling him what I was doing, and he brought some names in, and I remember looking at the word Athleticos, chopping the S off, and I wanted a word that began with A, so that became our name. But then a company called Accelerated, which we acquired, was a competitor, and then another one called ATI, Athletic Therapeutic Institute, was all based. 3 companies that began with A. We were the first, but the 3 companies began with A. All started in the Chicagoland area. ATI, as I've always said, kept me. They have some interesting business practices. They're very aggressive. They've done very well, and they've grown. They're bigger than we are right now because they've done a number of deals and a lot of acquisitions. I think we are, obviously, I feel we're the better company for a lot of reasons, but they kept my saw pretty sharp. When you mentioned people I've looked at, maybe admired, or just kind of held up myself to. There's a gentleman, Pat Croce. I don't know if you remember that name. He was a guy who he was a physical therapist, athletic trainer, worked for a clinic, started a company, eventually sold the company. This guy's a wild man. He was I think he was in a huge bad motorcycle accident. He was GM of the Philadelphia 76ers. He became an owner because they sold to Comcast, and he did very well. But he read a book. He wrote a book. Gosh, I went straight. Can't remember exactly. I could never get through the book. It drove me crazy because here's a book by a guy that was a physical therapist, started his own business, but he had this tough guy persona, and all he did was, guy would look at him wrong on the. He was also a black belt, and he just beat the tar out of the guy, and that was kind of what this book taught me, and I couldn't get anything out of it. But there are a number of people. I remember I read all the business books I could back in the day because I didn't have any formal business training. And so the one I remember was a book about Smith & Hawken was a gardening tool company and had a mail order service. And one of the themes of that book was, from the authors, the business founders, was stick to what you know and do it well and do it a lot. Because we can't be accountants, lawyers, real estate experts, finance people, and good physical therapists, athletic trainers. I figured out early on I need to hire good people around me, hire a good accountant, hire a good banker, hire a good lawyer, and do what I do well and do it a lot. And that's one lesson learned from some of those resources.
Yeah, they say it takes 10,000 hours, right, to be an expert in anything, basically, right? So you don't have that much time in your life to be an expert at everything. You can pick a couple things, one thing preferably, and maybe some type of fun thing you might do to try to be an expert besides your business. But otherwise, you're right. I mean, you try to get too many things, you're just not going to go very far. And I've learned that the hard way, actually, Mark, and jumping into business I shouldn't have been in, right? But today we serve the same customers. We're in an industry, we're pretty specific to industries for us, facilities and utilities, and so that helps a lot. It keeps us focused on, are we serving our customers, or are we going another direction compared to in the past? So I agree 100%. Stick with what you know, and be an expert at it, be the best at it, right? Strive to be world class, and you guys are an example of that. I mean, world class. If you're in the top 3 or 4 in the country at what you do, man, you're a world-class company, which is a blast to think about, right? And then think about all these people to look up to you and say, man, I want to do it like Mark did, and like Athletico did, right? It's kind of a thing, and that probably keeps you hungry, right? Hungry dogs run faster, and for sure, right? You have not stopped being hungry, and that's the reason you're still at the helm of this business. Yeah. So it's got to be fun, but it's got to be tough keeping up with you. If you're working in your organization, looking up to you can't be that easy for most people, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So
we have a lot of great leaders around the company, thankfully.
So what do you see the next 10 years for Athletico and for Mark Kaufman?
To that point, I stepped into and be another complete different conversation. A year ago, I stepped into the chairman role, and we hired a new CEO to run the day-to-day business. And I made that decision for a number of reasons. It was coming for a while. I wanted, to stay involved with the business. I was doing more of the things I would call I didn't enjoy, and less of the things I thought I was good at. And 500, being the guy that went from 0 clinic or 1 clinic to 520 was one thing. But as I told our partners, I'm not sure I will be the best guy, recognizing my strengths and my weaknesses, to be the best guy to take it to 1,000 clinics. And we're on a track to do that, to be the biggest, to be the best. And we have a lot of things going. So we identified what I felt was some of the areas that we wanted a healthcare person at scale, person who can do some things, allow me to dig into more of, I'll call it M&A industry stuff, some of the culture operations thing. And then also, which is big in our industry, is recruiting, education, work, being out in the field. And those are just some of the areas I wasn't doing a lot, and was ready to step into that. So still in the office practically every day, still working hard, still contributing, I think, in a better way, probably have a smile on my face more than I did a year ago. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, the teams had to rise up where, we were seen as an essential business, yet having to, go through complete transformation around how we treat our patients and be safe for both our staff and our patients has been something to be very proud at and watch. But for the next 10 years, I'd like to see ourselves continue to grow and be what I would see the best provider of outpatient physical therapists. I've always had the theme or adage for our business that I don't necessarily want to be the biggest. I only want to be the best operating outpatient rehab country in the world. And so I never thought, back when we were 20 sites, I had that same vision, that I wanted to be the best. And there's ways that we can do that. And I think back to what I said earlier, I think we do things as good as any. Name a competitor, I think we do things as good as any, and many things better. But if we're always trying to get better, I think that'll serve us well. Healthcare is an interesting animal right now. Athletico being in the, I call it conservative, non-invasive treatment realm of, if we get our hands on these patients with things like direct access to patients, and where they don't necessarily need to see a physician before they see us, and we're out in the fields and working games and things like that, provide other pathways to get into our centers. But we are in a good position, physical therapy I'm talking about, in a good position to really change the healthcare paradigm, bend the healthcare cost curve in a big way. Because I believe if you have any patient in pain, meaning joint pain, neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, low back, whatever, hip, you get them in the hands of a physical therapist early and give them half a dozen visits and get them on. We'll find out pretty quickly. A good physical therapist will find out pretty quickly, I can get this person better and get them back to full strength, full function, full capacity. Or maybe there's some I can. But I challenge you and I challenge our therapists to, you get all those people back that you can and teach them what physical therapy can do. You avoid all the downstream healthcare cost of opioids, huge topic today, imaging, MRIs, x-rays, surgery, for crying out loud, injections, things like that. And we can get them. And I don't think us as physical therapists have done a good job marketing ourselves as the tip of the spear for some of these things. And I think we have a lot of availability for success down the road from that.
No, absolutely. I mean, you think about the interaction a patient has with a doctor, and we've been through this lately with my wife's health and some other stuff. And interaction with a doctor, that's great. You see him for 5 minutes and you're in and out or whatever. Nurses a little more, right? You really can respect the stuff the nurses go through and all that. But then when you get into physical therapy, man, you really you have an appreciation for what physical therapists do. And they've got to have that selfless attitude, right, to be great. And all of them I've seen, they've got it, right. They care so much to figure out all the little issues and work on the last 10 years. I've grown to be. I didn't know what physical therapy was 10 years ago, probably, right. And nowadays I've seen it so many times that where it's really helped somebody along that would not have been a good place without it, compared to a doctor you go visit, a nurse if you're in the hospital, whatever, right. So the impact that you can make in this business is so cool, right? If you can really measure impact, holy cow, think of the impact this 5,000 person team makes every day, right, on society. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So
it's great. It's a great field. I love the field. I encourage people. I've talked to a lot of young people that are interested in physical therapy and outpatient care and athletic training every week, and it's part of my gig now, and I love it. But you have to have, as to what you said, Gary, you have to have passion for healthcare. You got to want to get people better, and you got to want to be the one that gets them back to full capacity or full health or back on the field. And it's such a rewarding career for that alone.
So my goal is to build a new political party in Illinois, a new Republican Party, right? And I'm thinking, I got to find physical therapists who want to get into politics, because we need selfless leaders. We got to stop with the corrupt, selfish politicians we have in states like Illinois. So I'm going after physical therapists now. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Retired, probably,
yeah,
right? But anyway, no, because I'm telling you, every physical therapist I've seen, including my niece, another girl who goes to church with us that we've seen it. Actually, they both work for you. They're caring people. They're selfless, caring people, right? Yeah. And so we were at RIC for some time. Same way there, unbelievable people there. But yeah, my niece Nicole Blackowitz handles like a Rockford area. The school's out by the Rockford area for you guys, and loves what she does, and she helps with my wife, helps with us anything we need as well. So pretty cool. Yeah. But anyway, let's go. Any questions, Robbie, that you've got to dig into our buddy Mark here?
I do indeed. So I probably should have mentioned this earlier, Mark, but all of my siblings married physical therapists. So I've been surrounded by it for the last 10, 15 years now. So one actually
fun Thanksgiving dinner talk.
Oh yeah. I mean, any injury that comes up, I know who to call, right? Mm-hmm. So my brother-in-law down here in Chicago worked at ATI. My other brother-in-law up in Madison works at UW Health with UW Health System. And then my sister-in-law works for the Theta Care system up in like the Appleton, Oshkosh area in Wisconsin. Right. But anyways, the reason I bring that up is a topic of conversation actually around the dinner table that we've had consistently is their frustration with some of the documentation and the processes internally that they have to go through. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in understanding what sort of softwares or augmentations have you guys started to implement to streamline that and make the lives of the PTs a little bit easier so they can focus on the patient and their health.
Yeah, it's been an interesting evolution in that. We had back in the old days, when I started, you'd carry around a stack of charts. You worked them for each individual patient. You documented a short, brief note that you could rely on for the next time you treat it, because we always like And our philosophy is you have one therapist take the patient through the course of care. You don't have multiple. But, going to some of Gary's comments and, we're the government, we're here to help. The government has made it difficult for us and some of the restrictions, and some of them are needed. The Privacy Act, HIPAA laws and regulations, and the electronic medical record requirement, which ultimately is a good thing, but the way it was rolled out, or the demands put on companies like ours, were, in some ways onerous to the point where it made things very difficult for the therapists providing care and for the companies to deliver, all the technology to our team. We've developed a system. It's proprietary. We've took a base box system and customized our own templates so our team could work through it. We've worked with, like when we did the acquisition of Accelerated, we pulled those together to make them even better. Took their version, our version, created a better version. We've since refined that. And at the same time, we're probably going to be moving towards a different system or a better system in the next year or two. You always have to be in front of technology. We used to use dictaphones. We used to use handhelds. We have, each therapist has their laptop and goes around and does their own documentation through the templates. And you try to be thorough, and you try to be efficient, and you try to give your therapist as much time they can have, because they want to treat patients. They want their hands on the patients. So that is the goal, to get them more time to do what they do best and what they love to do. And sometimes the requirements make it difficult, but I understand it. I'm going to talk badly about compliance and HIPAA and Privacy Act and things, but sometimes, it doesn't really, does the level of regulation make sense for us? So, problem is with CMS or Medicare, they're the lead dog, and all the payers generally follow them. And that's, like, right now I'm working with the industry at a Zoom meeting earlier today for something's called the Alliance of Physical Therapy Quality and Innovation. It's basically a industry group where we're trying to push back against what Medicare came out with, which is a 9% cut to reimbursement for physical therapy services. So 9%, cut for a third of your business. Our business is 25 to 30% Medicare, and that population is going to grow. We have to push back on it. And the problem is we don't have a voice in the room. The people that decide is an antiquated, something called the RUC process out at CMS in DC. They come up with this bunch of doctors in the room, no physical therapists, and they decide who's going to take a cut and who's going to get a raise. And then naturally, groups like us take cuts, so we have to push back. We got involved with lobbying and sitting, doing the DC run a few times, and now we're doing it virtually, and it's just part of the game you have to play now, and it's just a really bad system. And don't get me started in Illinois.
There's a group, that's a whole nother conversation we can have later, buddy, but there's a group called Job Creators Network, Mark, that I was one of the founding members of, and still on the board of, that you might want to look at. We've been very strong in fighting bad regulation, and it's usually led by somebody from an industry that comes to us and say, hey, here's something that's going to kill jobs, and baby, it's all about killing jobs, right? When you're killing certain industries, you're killing jobs. Right. And so again, if you ever want to look into it, or I can get you in front of our team, but bottom line is, when you got an issue, go to them, they'll dig into it, and then we'll get our CEOs across the country to speak up about it. So that happened with the franchise laws that when the Obama administration were looking to change, so that every franchisee could be held accountable, every franchisor could be held accountable for the franchisees, right? Which would ruin the franchise relationship, and you wouldn't have them, right? But right. Bottom line is, they're going to get that done. And I got a couple of friends of mine from YPO, actually, good friends of mine that they're big franchisors, to get involved on our board. And sure enough, boy, we stopped it. And it was, the 2,200 CEOs across the country that all, most of them are just told to speak up about this rule this regulation that'll kill an industry or hurt an industry. So something that, if you ever want to look into, it's called JCN. Bernie Marcus started it about 10 years ago. I was one of the first CEOs on board, and we've got a couple thousand now. So got a great voice, and we're very connected to DC. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I wrote that down, and you're 100% right.
Okay, so what else you got?
I would say the last question that I had written down was just a curiosity around how you had to pivot during the virus. Obviously, I know you said that you guys were deemed essential, but I know, for example, due to my siblings, they mentioned some telehealth, starting to see the early stages of that within PT and some of the hiccups that have come along with that. But I'm just curious to understand sort of how the pandemic impacted you and your business, and if you see any trends that might last.
Yeah, the leadership, it's a good question. It seems so long ago, right? But, mid-March, I was at the Big Ten basketball tournament in Indianapolis, representing Athletico and doing what I need to do there. And, we get words comes out that they're shutting down the tournament to fans the next day. And then it comes out the whole tournament's shut down. And then, as we all know, our world was upside down. And so I remember saying to myself, I just get every thought of mine. It felt like in my head, there was just these dominoes falling around, meaning everything I thought of led to another thought, Well, what if this happens and that happens? And I just kept saying, I can't get my arms around this yet. But luckily for us and our team, I think we came together. Ron, our CEO, did a great job leading us through that. The team pulled together. We had already started something that became our telehealth service that we were doing with our athletic trainers, virtual visits, so to speak, and virtual evaluations, just giving people insight on what might be going on. So we took that and rolled out telehealth to where during the high point of the pandemic, we were doing practically 10% of our clinic, or 10% of our physical therapy visits were being done via telehealth. And that number got up to thousands. It's dropped down some now as patients and people are more comfortable in the clinic situation, which honestly delivers the best care, but it forced us to quickly pivot, as you said, and recognize how we could deliver services through a different path. And that's here to stay. There's, for people in the old, I think business travel is going to be hugely affected here, but a patient that I remember treating, I'd treat them twice, and then they had to go on the road, or they were a consultant Monday to Thursday, and I wouldn't see them, and I'd ask them, here's your home program, here's a picture of a few exercises you need to do in the hotel. They'd never do them. They never get better. It took longer for them to recover from their injuries because they simply weren't able to be as compliant and consistent with their visits. But now you have that. You can do it with a phone. You can do it with this laptop. You can do it any number of ways, and people are seeing. And two, didn't surprise me much, but therapists and physical therapists, occupational therapists, hand therapists, athletic trainers, some of the most creative, resilient people I know, and they quickly, you had to watch it to appreciate it. But their first, me giving you some visual verbal instructions over this, and I'd figure out very quickly what worked and what didn't work, to where within a week I was good at delivering telehealth virtual visits. And I saw that happen with our team, that they became very proficient very quickly in how to do that, having no experience. We rolled out a platform-wide training practically overnight. We trained people up, we got them the equipment, and we got them up and doing it. And to the team's credit, they did a fantastic job. I don't know where I see that ultimately landing, but like you said, it's going to be part of the go forward, because people want, I'm grabbing my phone right now, people want access, on their terms. If you ask a group of, I'll call kids your age, when was the last time you called and made a dinner reservation? You'd probably laugh at me, because you'll just go on and book it like my daughters do, where I still call. I bet Gary still calls and makes a dinner reservation once in a while. But it's the same with healthcare. You want it at your fingertips, and you want to be able to log on. And if Athletico can't deliver it, you'll find somebody else. And so we've had to adjust.
Interesting. Well, perseverance is key. Nice job.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. The team's done a good job.
So we'll round out. What do you do for fun? What do you do for recreation? You and your family, Mark, or you individually?
Well, I fell in love with the desert when I was down in grad school. The Iowa boy that went down the desert and hated it because it was all brown and hot, and I was working football all day. And then 6 weeks later, it's October 15th, and it's beautiful, and I never want to leave, right? And so we have a place we get to now, and I hope to get to more. We haven't used it as much down in Arizona and in the Phoenix area and Tucson. And so I find the desert relaxing, spiritual, and we as a family enjoy that. We've traveled, with the Greek wife. We've been to Greece several times. I had to convince her there's some other countries in the world I'd like to visit someday before I got a late start in travel. My vacations growing up were to St. Louis or Chicago or Kansas City, or God help me, Des Moines, Iowa, for a 3-day vacation. That was a big deal. And so places I want to see. We've done some travel with the girls. They're getting to the age where, you know, they're more fun than I am, and they get us out. I play golf. I like to exercise. Again, that's golf is I played enough to get frustrated, but I like trying to get better at that, and just to, you know, the camaraderie around that. But I love sport. I like watching and not participating. I've worked with too many bad injuries that you won't see me skiing or on a rugby pitch, but I like the what sport brings to the world. And I guess for the rest of the stuff, I'm not a hunter fisherman, though I did grow up doing some of those activities. That I'll blame the girls. Having 3 daughters doesn't get me out doing that so much, but I like being outside. I like working in the garden and doing some other things. And I always joke with the girls that I'm a lifelong learner. I just like learning and applying myself. And I guess for my professional life, setting aside Athletico, I'm involved with a number of groups. Operation Walk goes out and delivers total joints, knees, and hips, where we send a team of surgeons, physical therapists, anesthesiologists, nursing to different parts of the world and in the United States to deliver people that are basically indigent. They cannot move right now because they need a total hip. It's amazing what the work delivers to these people, because these people are bedridden, and they give them a quality of life because they can't move because of their total knee or their arthritic hip. And I've been involved with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I'm kind of a guy that, you know, there's so much need in the world, but I like working on my own backyard. And so the city of Chicago, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Metropolitan Chicago has probably been the biggest focus of my charitable efforts. I've been on their board chair for a number of terms, been on the board since probably 2003. And that is, if you don't know Big Brothers mission, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, that's mentoring of kids at risk, you know, usually single parent, and just aren't, you know, multiple kids with the kids, frankly, aren't going to have a chance with a quality mentor in their life. So pairing up a big, meaning a mentor, a parent, or an adult with a child, and the transformation you see through those relationships. You and I and all of us were lucky to have good mentors, good parenting, good nuclear family, but that's not always the case in cities like Chicago. And so got involved with those and some other charitable efforts that I'm really proud to be part of and support in any way I can.
Awesome. You know what? When you want to, you know, really hone in that golf game, dude, you got to come out and play my golf course.
We hit that subject at one time. If we don't get it this fall before the snow flies, we'll get it. I'll look forward to that. And
find a time. You got a buddy, you got a friend that likes to play tough golf courses. If anybody that's really a pure golfer that loves the game, even if they're not great, they usually love a challenging golf course, and it's in pristine condition. That's what we got. So get your butt out anytime in the coming weeks to come and play Bull Valley with me. If we got to wait till spring, we'll have to wait till spring, but the course is in amazing shape. It's a lot of fun to play in the fall. So I want to see you come out whenever you can.
Yeah, let's see if we can make that happen. I'm writing them down. That's a good chance when I write things down, they get done.
Yeah, let's do it. It'd be a blast. Robbie, you usually got some good takeaways there. I got mine, but go ahead with yours first, and I'll finish with just my summary that I got here.
All right. Well, to kick it off, the first takeaway that I had was actually to focus on adding value to those in your industry that are more secondary or tertiary relationships. And I attributed that back to when you were starting out your first clinic. You started sending referrals to other doctors in the area, and that eventually wound its way into you building up a network in your space. And you never asked for anything in return. And I think that's the biggest key there, is building those relationships, but ultimately not expecting anything upfront in return, and just doing it out of the kindness of your heart, and in hopes that at the time you can make that patient better. The second one is hands-on experience is the best experience and the best teacher, and you just need to be willing to dive in head first. And I think that goes right back to when you had first sent that letter before going to the University of Iowa, which sent you down the trajectory of athletic training and what that world all entailed. And had you not sent that first letter, life could have been a lot different today. So just being willing to take those risks and a little bit of a leap of faith. The third one that I have is be patient when picking a business partner, and make sure that you align on your mission and vision. And obviously you learned through, I guess I could call it a mistake, early on with your second clinic. but you quickly rebounded, realigned on those mission and vision statements, and ultimately found the right individuals moving forward. And then while I was working at LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman consistently talked about leading with your true north or North Star, other leaders I've heard speak of. But it really comes back full circle to the story that you had mentioned of how can you speak with authenticity to your employees, and how can you make everyone feel as if you're in there together. And operationally, what that really does is it influences your culture and the longevity of your business as a result. And the last one that I have is live with the growth mindset. Is that one of the last things that you had just said is you're a lifelong learner. And I don't think that's by chance that as a lifelong learner, you ended up as successful as you had. And I'm a big believer in that.
Great. Well said.
Awesome. So what I got is, you know, I always focused on hiring farm boys and wrestlers. And I usually had pretty good luck with great performers, right? Yeah. And also, you know, wrestlers are usually pretty competitive. So if they're in business, as entrepreneurs, they just want to kick butt every day and do the best they can to serve better than the rest of them, right? So I think your farm boy Iowa wrestler grit is spectacular to see and watch, and it's going to continue on. And I can't wait to see where this goes. But it's pretty amazing. You know, I see a lot of entrepreneurs through a lot of relationships that you and I have in leadership. And boy, it's not very common when somebody goes from a entry-level PT employee to a startup business and then still stays on board as leading it as long as you have. Usually it's within I would say somewhere around 25% of where you've gone that you got to look around, whether it's a private equities group that tells you this or a great board tells you, hey man, get the hell out of the way now. You're not built to continue to grow on this thing and scale it, right? So what I love is just, you know, you partner with a firm, and yet you still stayed in place until recently. You're the CEO of this crazy scaling growth. Just isn't common. That definitely comes back to your lifelong learning, because boy, you had to learn so many things on how to be different all the way along. I mean, from the beginning to where you are today, you had to morph into a different type of leader the whole way through, right? Same core values and all that, but your skills had to change continuously, which is pretty cool, because that's something that I can say I've not been great at. I've struggled sometimes to see when I should be in a place that I'm in, right? So that's really, I think that's awesome, and that's not common. I love that you're out, you know, your lifelong learning also, I think, produces differentiation on a constant basis, because, you know, if we get stagnant, you know, competition will eat us up in a short period of time. If we can stay off, always learning, always striving to be better, always trying to serve better, you're going to find out what's going to differentiate you to swim away from the shark-infested waters of commoditization into the blue ocean, right? That you're in, I think you're in today, and that I'm always going to strive to stay in, right? So we're blessed to have you on the show, buddy, and anybody listening to your story is going to have a lot to think about for sure when it comes to, you know, how they look at their future and their growth and their entrepreneurial journey. So you're awesome, man. Thanks for everything.
Losing at the last second, huh? Yeah.
There you go. You know, the thing I'm listening to you guys, you know, I think about this. I've had that pinch me moment, you know, 100 times a year there for a while, but I've often thought that if you would have told Mark Kaufman when he was working with his dad in Olds, Iowa, thinking about going to college, that he was going to go to college for 9 years and move to a city like Chicago, big city like Chicago, and work for a couple years and then start a business on his own and hire 5,000 people and open 500 centers in 12 states, I probably would have just said, you know what, I don't think so. I'll just stay and be a carpenter with my dad. So it was a gradual progression, but you know, I'm very blessed. I'm very appreciative of all that, you know, looking back in my rear view mirror, all the mentors and important people that you know, for whatever reason, it was perfect, right? It just worked out. But story's not done yet, but it's been a great 30 years for Athletico.
It sure has, and we really appreciate you being on our podcast, buddy. And I can't wait to get to know you better. So get your butt out and look off.
We'll look forward to staying in touch, and you guys stay healthy, and I'll stay in touch. Okay.
Thanks so much, Mark. That was great.
Thanks, Mark. And well, thanks a lot. Until next time.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Yeah.
Ditch Digger CEO. Check it out. Bye.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks,
Man. Appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah. You guys are great. Thanks a bunch. It was fun.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I like the tag team. I didn't expect that. I thought I had to talk to Gary the whole time. That was fun.
Although he is a good talker.
Thanks, man. Have a great day, Mark.
Great. Yeah, you guys stay healthy, like I said, and I'm gonna keep moving with my next task on my list. But we'll stay in touch. I look forward to the product, and if there's anything else you need from me, let me know. And Gary, keep your golf clubs clean.
Yeah, put golf at Bull Valley. Put golf at Bull Valley in that list now.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's there. I got it.
Yeah.
Already wrote it down. It's right there. Okay,
All right,
guys.
see you guys.
See ya.